Rise, let's pledge the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Keller, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Lyons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Orthwine.
Here.
Mayor Morgan.
Here.
Also present, the Town Manager Gregory Denham, Assistant Town Attorney Edward Nazaro, Police Chief Edward Allen, and myself.
Thank you very much. We've been presented with the minutes from our last meeting on May 8th. Are there any corrections, additions, or comments?
Yes, one. Bear with me. Now I got to find it. Sorry. Sorry. It's two.
Get it right, Paul.
Of course, now I can't find my note. Oh, here it is. It's on the report by the town manager, utility undergrounding, page 2, about 3/4 of the way down on the paragraph. And it starts with Danny Brannon.
Yes.
So the sentence reads, now he added he would be contacting Danny Brannon, then an attorney. I don't know what that meant. Is he an attorney? I thought he was a consultant.
I think it's then he would be contacting an attorney that worked with the town. That's how I read it. Is that right?
Okay, that's fine. As long as it's clear to others, it's fine with me. Thank you.
I think Danny and an attorney. Any other comments? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes May 8th?
I'll move to approve the minutes May 8th. Second.
Miller?
Commissioner Lyons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwine.
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Ms. Taylor, any additions or changes to the agenda?
I have none.
Very good. Our next meeting will be July 10th at 9 a.m. for anyone who wishes to attend. Comments from the public? Don't know that they could, so. Mr. Gainer.
Where's the
Good to see you.
Here?
That's you right there.
Okay.
Your mask on, I didn't recognize.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Very briefly, I know that you're just starting the budgeting process, and unfortunately, Christine could not make it today. But the coalition is working pretty hard on trying to coordinate, for safety purposes, the outdoor cameras up and down A1A. And I'm only saying that she will be coming in and speaking to excuse me, the town manager. I can't speak with this darn thing. Speaking with the town manager on some ideas that you may or may not, but you may want to put into the budget. So I'm really standing for her today, but it's something that I think is pretty important and should be considered diligently as we put together the upcoming budget.
Thank you. We actually have studied cameras and received a report from
good.
Hasley.
That's good.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah, okay, good.
I will be happy to discuss it with her.
All right, great.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? If not, let's move on to our public hearing. First, not just with respect to 2943, but any of the applications today other than any ex parte communications. I spoke to Mr. Snavely regarding several times regarding his property.
Yeah, I have also.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Very good. Okay, let's move on then to 2943 Polo Drive. Anyone who's going to speak needs to be sworn in.
Yeah, that includes all those, please. Anyone here?
Yeah, actually, with respect to any of the applications today, you may want to rise, and we'll just do it at one time.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Get all those.
His picture's not up there yet. He's there, he just hit his webcam.
I'm sorry, I was on a call. Do we need the Pippin's Curb Analysis Polo Drive show?
We need Richard Jones.
Richard Jones.
Can you
Okay.
hit your webcam, Mr. Jones?
I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yeah, but we need your webcam.
Okay. I click on it and, oh, I'm sorry. Let me pop it up. There you go. Hello.
There you go, thank
Morning.
you.
Mayor, can I quickly interrupt? As I'm a neighbor of the applicant, I'm going to accuse myself.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, Mr. Jones, we're ready for your presentation.
Thank you very much. And Rebecca, do I have control of the screen?
Yes, you do.
Okay, good morning. Richard Jones with Richard Jones Architecture. I can actually say I'm here in Delray Beach right at this time. And it's a pleasure to present this project before you today, 2943 Polo Drive. I did click in a few minutes earlier before 9, and I heard some discussions regarding this project, so I would be happy to address any issues that have recently popped up. Dave Bodker is also joining me remotely. He will be presenting the landscape architecture and the heavy vegetation that we have surrounding the entire site. So 2943 Polo Drive. And let's take a look first at the site location on Polo. It is the second house in from the intersection of Gulfview Drive and Polo. The majority of the homes adjacent are all one story. They all share a city alleyway that's heavily vegetated with existing trees and landscape. Some of the houses that you'll notice, the house on the corner, are pulled further away from the rear setback. But as you go further down Polo, approaching Middle Drive, you'll notice that there are other homes that go as far back as the 20-foot setback to the alley in this block of 10 homes. So out of the 10 homes there are some that extend all the way to the rear setback, and that there are some that are pulled away from the rear setback, including the home that is directly to the east of us that appears to have a covered area right here, literally right on the setback line. If we go to the next slide, which is the survey, it shows the existing one-story home that is existing with the pool in the backyard. There is a significant drop-off, as significant, I guess, as you can get in South Florida. It's about a 3-foot drop-off of the grade from the pool deck to the rear alley, as seen in the survey. We go to the next slide. You can see the adjacent properties, actually the subject property. There's a circular drive with existing tree that I believe is remaining. And there's a carport awning to the north. And then you can see the street view facing due north and the street view facing due south. The adjacent property to the north is a one-story Gulfstream Bermuda style home with a similar circular drive and landscaping in the island. The adjacent property to the south is a one-story home with a little less vegetation. And then the property directly across the street is a two-story single-family home with heavy vegetation in the front. And this is our illustrative color site plan. As you see, we're proposing a one-story home. Oh, and if I may, our client in this project is Seaside Builders, Mr. Tom Ladowney. I believe you're all familiar with his work. He's built about a dozen homes in Gulfstream over the last 6 or 7 years. All have been very contributing to the character of the town. And he is not able to be here today, but I just wanted to make you all aware of who the owner was. So we're proposing a one-story home, 5,240 square feet, total gross area, 2-car garage. Access is provided through a circular driveway. It features a swimming pool at the rear of the property and a detached guest cottage. And the house wraps around in a courtyard fashion. There is a retaining wall a few feet back from the structure along the line here of the cursor. And there's some steps, inviting steps going down to a very lush landscaped lower terraced green space with some very large existing trees that are remaining, ficus trees and palm trees. As you can see, the notes here, several are remaining, and also others are being relocated to this lower terrace, which is a significant little amenity and green space, and also at a lower level in keeping with the character of the grades of the other properties that are on the site. The next slide shows our data table. Excuse me. This is our data table, 15,589 square feet. It's important to note that we're not asking for any special exceptions. The house does meet the LDRs for the size of the house. The required landscape area is 40% by code, and we have an additional 5% of landscape area, taking it to 45%. It's also important to note that we're providing extra setbacks, both on the front and the rear of the house, where the rear only 20 foot is required. And as you saw from the aerial, there are some structures existing that are out the 20-foot line, but this house is at 27 feet 4 inches. So another 7.5 feet plus or minus of additional setback on the rear, and an additional 5 feet of setback on the front. It's also important to note that we're underneath the maximum height requirement as well. And
Richard?
yes.
Let me just interrupt you there. That's my problem with the house. It actually is a very nice house. Aesthetically, it looks nice. And I'd like to see a little bit more about the reduced setback in the rear of the home as well as the height, because what I'm seeing in the town of Gulfstream is an aesthetic change, and that is maximizing the full use of these small lots along Polo and Gulfstream. You had pointed it out initially in that aerial photograph. Homes like this one are being built such that in the past, the home ended at the pool, and you had a backyard with a pool. And then your neighbor to the west or to the east, depending on which way you were facing, had a similar designed home. And as a result, when you looked out the back of your home, you had a much more open, expansive view. Whereas here, with these homes encroaching on the setback, it reminds me more of towns to the south of us, where they're maximizing the space, and when you look out the back of your home, sitting at your pool, you can see homes on the other side of your property. That's my concern here. You've pushed a wing out on one side and a guest house on the other that look to be near the setbacks, and I'm concerned for the neighbor to the east side, what they'd be looking at.
Okay, well, I believe in looking at, and I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I believe you had mentioned talking about the reduced setback, but we actually have an increased setback. Looking at this particular plan, we understand your concern, and one of our concerns was the neighbor to the east. I believe that's a two-story home. I believe, looking at the cursor here, and this structure, this little covered area that's in the back here, and the two-story home appear to be close to the property line. So if anything, there's a concern about the neighbor looking into this yard versus, the neighbor looking versus us. The concern is us seeing the neighbor looking into the yard versus the neighbor looking into our yard. But Dave Bodker will address that with the heavy trees and the vegetation to the rear of the property. But looking at the...
And clearly the property to the east goes just as far. I guess my point is, if we keep allowing this, it affects the neighborhood district's aesthetics. And all of a sudden, all the homes, whereas I'm looking at this photo right now, and the two homes to the east and south, appear to be close to that setback.
Right.
The others do not. The others seem more traditional.
Right. These two homes appear to be, especially this one with the all the way to the south. Now these are older. This one's an older home on the corner of Gulfview and Gulfstream. This one's, I believe, a newer home that's one in. And then you have these two along Middle Road. They all appear to be at the 20-foot setback, which is the code minimum for conformance with the LDRs. And it's important to note that we're 27 feet 4 inches. So we're actually, I think, more in line with your concerns about being further setback from the rear setback line according to the LDR. So we're actually, I believe, helping the issue by setting back further. We could have designed the home right to 20 feet and still conform like some of the other ones that are adjacent, but we chose to be an additional 7.5 foot back. And I think once you see Dave Bodker's landscape elevations and what he plans for that back terrace area, you'll be very pleased with the screening and how we're keeping in character of the old neighborhood with the lush green backyards.
Is that why you did that? And I misspoke. I didn't mean reduce. I meant increase the setback as well. Is that why you took that extra 7 feet?
Well, we wanted to have enough rear terrace. We saw this property with the alley as, and Mr. Ladowney as well, saw it as an amenity, a plus for the lot, to have a large green space in the back, especially if it were to be a family that eventually were to occupy this home, and to have different levels of entertaining area in the rear yard, an upper level at the house level with a pool and a courtyard, a detached garage, a detached cottage to minimize the massing of the house so that the roof would not continue with the main house, further opening up and providing more green space. And then also providing this significant lower level terrace where children can play or people could hang out on lawn chairs underneath the vegetation. And so we feel that this design is actually very much in keeping with the character, and is in so doing is very much in keeping with the character of these 10 homes, and certainly set back further than the immediate two adjacent to the east. So yes, we did take that into consideration. And we could have pushed the pool and the cottage and everything a little further back to give more courtyard area, but we wanted to keep it as close as possible to the house.
Thank you.
And so if I may go through then to the floor plan.
I first moved to Gulfstream, our first house was very similar to this, at this end of the, town. And it worked out really well. I had a little pool house, hedging, and I didn't think it was, detrimental to neighbors at all. I mean, I kind of have my own little world.
And so, again, here's the floor plan. Very nice symmetry on the front of the house. We have a very welcoming little courtyard here in the front with a low wall and a terrace, very inviting. It helps to transition the grade differential from the street to the new elevation that we need to build out for the FEMA regulations. And so it's a gradual stepping up to the house. Very formal symmetry on the foyer with the den and the dining room, great room loggia, and looking out to the pool. And then the house with guest wings on one side and the master suite on the other, all surrounding the pool. Again, the detached cottage with open air arbor connection, create that nice living environment where, you could spend a few weeks just hanging out in the backyard if you're not able to head out of town, which as we're designing houses these days, we're seeing the home as being a place that we really have to focus on. And when you're there, you feel like you don't need to go anywhere else. You're happy exactly where you're at. And so if we look at the elevations, again, we have that charming Gulfstream Bermuda style, which is one of our favorite styles of architecture. And we have some, it's very complementary to other houses on the street. We have some nice details, including louvered shutters, decorative finials, crown moldings, chimneys, and the decorative wood arbors, all tied in with these nice scalloped wing walls. And again, here's that little inviting entry courtyard and terrace. And the side elevations, again, maintaining the standards in the LDRs for eave heights. You'll notice that to the neighbors, the house eave heights are only 10'6". So the central portion of the house that has the higher eave height is set further back, and it's more interior. The neighbors to the north and south do not even see the 12'6" eave height or the 12-foot eave height, and it's all 10'6" along the side property lines. We carry the same details around with the trim around the windows and the shutters. Here's the little break in the massing to minimize the roof line between the main house and the detached cottage. And again, the front elevation, the white stucco, the medium colored gray roof, the green shutters and trim, and I believe there was only one comment at ARPD about the green color, and we're providing samples to Rita for that. And that is flexible, of course. The color, that accent color, could be whatever color you would like to see that's compatible with the streetscape. Now, again, the landscaping shown here is done in a way so that you can see more of the house. Dave Bodker will be presenting the actual visual of what you see from the street, what you see from the north and south neighbors, and what you see from the neighbor that is to the east. And before I turn it over to Dave, I'd just like to go back to that illustrative site plan, if I could. And from From the east side, you see the alley, and then you see the very large existing trees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees to remain. Coconut palms relocated, some to remain as well. And then the house itself having 2 distinct entertaining areas. It has an upper level pool deck with a little outdoor area for eating and the detached cottage. Again, we're 7 feet from the actual setback line, which is out here where the retaining wall is and the steps leading down to the lower terrace. So we have an additional 33% of rear setback added in with this design. And then we have the lower terrace, which is a significant green space in keeping with the character of the surrounding neighbors and all of the vegetation to remain. And so I'll forward again through to the final slide. Ooh, excuse me. I went to the next, I went actually into the.
I'll take care of it. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Sorry about that. I just wanted to bring it up back to the
Okay,
rendering.
let's see. There we go. Nope, that's this one. Screen again.
Richard, did the floor level of this house have to be raised to meet the new federal flood standards?
Yes, it's current. Thank you very much. It's currently at the FEMA plus 12 inches per the Florida Building Code. And so, Reed, I believe we're at 7.0.
Yes.
And
Yes,
what,
which is-
Richard, explain what impact, if any, that has on neighbors to the north and south, who may be
Well,
low.
We are building and living in an era of global warming, if you will, to a certain extent. Sea level rises, of course. FEMA for many, many years talked about raising up finished floor elevations. They finally did about 2 years ago, and they're already talking about another one coming. And so as an architect, we have to keep in mind that we need to provide a finished floor elevation that is not only consistent with FEMA, but is consistent with the Florida Building Code in order to receive a permit to build. And at the same time, be compatible with our neighbors' properties, which may be slightly lower elevation. And so what that means is it's a delicate balance between raising up the site a foot or two, and but also not raising it up too much to create such an imbalance from the neighbors. So what we do is we try to leave a good portion of the site down at the existing level, which again, we're doing with the front elevation and the rear, the front yard and the rear yard, by having the steps here in the front by the courtyard, and then more steps at the front door. And if you looked at the floor plan, there's actually steps from the garage going into the house. So the whole approach keeps the front property lower in keeping with the streetscape. And then again, we did it on the back. And as you can see here, there's 3 or 4 steps leading down to the lower terrace, which is about 2.5 feet down, in keeping in back with the rear yards of the other neighbors. And then along the sides, we have, I believe, about 2 feet of retaining wall to accommodate the elevated slab of the structure. So it is a design challenge, and it's a balance, and we always like to balance it between, we don't want to raise the walls, have retaining walls that are too high and create an imbalance, but they also couldn't be too low as well, because that would create an issue for undermining of the structure as well, since you need to keep a certain amount of minimum cover on the footings per the building code. And so we've been doing that over the past 2 years since FEMA raised their level, and then the Florida Building Code subsequently added another 12 inches. And so we address that, through design to create that balance.
Thank you. Any questions on the design of the home, elevations? Maybe we can move on then to the landscape.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Dave Bodker,
Dave?
601 North Congress Avenue, Delray Beach, Florida.
Mr. Barker, one moment, let me get your webcam up. Do you need me to have the presentation on my computer, or do you have it ready to go on yours?
I have it here. I'm trying to click on show my screen. So.
Okay, let's see. All right.
I don't know if you can see me or can you see the plan?
We can see both.
Okay, good. All right, along Polo Drive, there's an existing large ficus tree right in the center of the lot. And you can see my plan right here. That tree is approximately 25 feet high with a 34-foot spread. And we all thought it was very important to retain that tree in place as it fits kind of with the neighborhood and large trees along Polo. That existing ficus tree will be underplanted with white begonias, green island ground cover, dwarf Asian jasmine, imperial bromeliads, and 2 relocated pygmy date palms on either side of the large ficus tree. On the north and south sides of the driveway, we are relocating 2 really nice foxtail palms so that when you're coming or going along the driveway, you see those as a focal point to the sides. And underneath the foxtail palms, we'll have Ixora, Liriope, 5-foot height clusia hedges along the property lines. Frame the front door, I'm proposing Sylvester date palms, so 1 here and 1 here. Be underplanted with bromeliads, dwarf Asian jasmine, Louisiana iris. Additionally, Japanese blueberry accent trees will occur at this point here, here, and here. Raised entrance acts kind of like a small courtyard, and surrounding that, we'll have a dwarf Ixora hedge on either side. And the interior of that raised courtyard will be artificial turf. The north and south property lines, so along here and here, we'll have a 5-foot clusia hedge. As Rich said, there will be a 2-foot retaining wall, or approximately 2 feet retaining wall on either side. And the outside of those retaining walls have a finished appearance. And city staff regarding that and what it would look like. Additionally, there will be an aluminum railing running along that just behind the retaining wall. And then behind that is a 5-foot clusia hedge. So from the adjacent properties, you'll have a 7-foot barrier, the 2-foot retaining wall, and a 5-foot clusia hedge. Additionally, what we want to do is relocate as many of the existing palm trees as is possible. And that's what you see here. And then if you refer to sheet IL1 and look at the north elevation, you'll see some palm trees along those elevations. Those will serve to kind of break up the roof line. In addition to that, we put some yellow elder flowering trees kind of fill in the gaps to break the roof line again. We spoke to the neighbors about this type of treatment for screening the existing homes on the north and the south. And this was preferable to putting complete areca palms or fishtail palms along these properties because they shade out so much of the adjacent properties and take the light away from the side yards of those adjacent properties. If we're not successful in relocating those trees, as there's no guarantee on relocated plant material, our intention is to supplement what we have now in terms of the yellow elder trees, the clusia hedge, with some sable to create the same effect as the relocated trees that we show on our elevation. That'll occur here and again here. The east or the rear side of the property, right along the alley, there are big existing ficus trees. These ficus trees are 30 to 40 foot height with about the same spread. They're underplanted underneath those existing ficus trees. There's probably 18 to 20 foot height areca palms. It's very dense in here. There's one opening to get in the alley right at the southeast corner, right in here. And we're going to relocate some new areca palms in that area to kind of block off that little opening that's there. But if you look at my sheet IL1, and you look at the east elevation, which is the second one down from the top, you can see kind of what we expect that you will see from the alley. When I go to the existing home that's on the property now, their pool deck is in this area. When I look back here, I wouldn't know there's a two-story home back here on the east of the alley. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Mr. Vodka regarding the landscape?
Dave, did you show the elevations?
I did.
Okay, thanks.
I think you have them in your package, and if you can look at, let me see if I can switch screens
Yeah, we
here.
do it, IL2, the second to last page. It's actually more helpful because I can see
It's the second page on the PowerPoint, Dave.
Yeah, let me see if I can get there.
That's the next slide.
Rebecca, I don't know if you can switch it for me.
Yes, give me 1 second.
So it's in our packet.
Okay.
Yeah, man, I think you've done the best you can, and certainly are protecting that view from both sides of the rear. On the east, the north and south side, the raising of the finished floor elevation is going to create problems, not just aesthetically for those neighbors, but also for sound, as sound goes from higher properties down to lower. But there's nothing you can do about that. That is the law, and you have to comply with it. So I think you're doing the best you can to try to curb that, both aesthetically. I don't know about the sound. I think you've addressed the major concerns that I've had, and I'm speaking both to Richard and to Dave.
The world.
Anyone else
Thank you.
have comments?
I am having technical difficulties. Come on.
I just have one comment overall, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Just in regards to, we've ended up with a couple of houses. This is in regard to the front elevation, which sort of ties into both Dave and Richard. I just want to confirm with the commission. So we're in the process of kind of saving these older, what I call branching tree specimens, which, whether it's a ficus or a banyan, that's usually slap in the middle of these lots that are being redeveloped. So you've got one more. I think they've addressed this, but I just want to confirm everyone's opinion. So the other house where the design lends itself to save a tree was 3133. And that's where we have basically the one-story home with the split garage concept and the circular drive in order to save our, these mature branching trees to maintain the streetscape. And from
looking at the elevations, I'm reasonably confident that even though that house is quite a ways down the street, that Richard Jones has, changed the elevation, has some more unique design elements on the front facade that differentiate it from that home, even though, again, it's a ways down the street. I just wanted to confirm, while we're at it, that everybody was reasonably satisfied. I think that the front elevation of this home looks great. I mean, huge improvement as always. I like one-story homes. So I just wanted to confirm with everybody else what their opinion was on that.
I would be happy to address that, Tom, if you'd like, unless.
Sure, thank you, Richard.
Okay. Well, again, we do a lot of single-family home design in the area. We do houses with garages in the front, houses with garages in the rear, 2-car garages on one side, 3-car split garages, 1-car split garages. And just because a house has a split 1-car garage, and there's another house in the area with a split 1-car garage, does that mean it's the same design? No more than a house with a 2-car garage facing forward on one side is in some way similar to other houses on the street with a 2-car garage facing forward. What you'll notice from this house is significant detailing with gable end roofs, and scalloped side parapet walls and embellished gates with arbors and other detailing for it to be a unique home, and which it is. It's got its own unique floor plan, it's a courtyard plan. And so where it might share with another house in the neighborhood that it has a split garage, I would say that is just one minor detail, similar to how other houses have 2-car garages off to one side. So this home is certainly unique in its own right, and I believe fits in well with the character of the entire neighborhood.
Other comments from commissioners?
No, I think the architecture is very nice. I think a new concept was originated when we did the garages on both sides. And they do have a similar, because the ficus tree is the focal point in the front. And I think encourage people to keep the mature landscaping. So I think we have to understand that they have to do designs a little differently maybe sometimes. But I think the architecture is very nice, actually.
I'm glad to see all the trees being preserved, and that the house is working around the natural landscaping.
The only thing is, the trees are so beautiful. I think, and this is a different thing, is to keep people to maintain them, because otherwise it won't be so pretty.
That's a good point.
I mean, and I don't know how we can mandate maintaining, but these trees are very vulnerable to hurricanes if they're not maintained. So that's a different subject.
They need to be trimmed.
Yeah, they need to be trimmed, but people don't like to spend the money.
No, it's expensive to do it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Frankly, outside of the single tree look, I think you've differentiated it. I kind of like the split look. It's single level homes. So I think the design is fine. Any other comments, questions? Comments from the public? If not, let's move on to motions.
Can I have an can I move? Okay.
Him not here.
An application submitted, I would like to propose a demolition permit to demolish existing structures on the property at 2943 Polo, LLC.
Second.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend the land clearing permit to clear area for the new construction at 2943 Polo Drive.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes.
And third, I'd like to approve the level 3 architectural site plan review to construct one single-family Gulfstream Bermuda style 4314 square foot dwelling with 2 one-car garages and a 300 square foot guest cottage and swimming pool.
Second.
Ms. Taylor?
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White? Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes.
Oh, I have two.
That's,
You have two conditions on that motion, by the way.
I have two,
right.
with
We'll do it
following
separately.
conditions. Is that right?
Yeah, the conditions.
So there are two, prior to the building permit, is that?
Yeah, you need to do that.
Prior to the permit, the owner of the property shall prepare and sign a Gulfstream driveway removal agreement, and any modifications in the civil landscaping shall be submitted to the town manager for review and approval, and any major modification shall be brought back to the ARPD for approval prior to commencement of landscaping. With those two conditions. I'd like to amend my motion.
Let's revote. Second? Ms. Taylor?
Vice Mayor Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein?
Yes.
Mayor Morgan?
Yes. Richard, David, thank you for taking the time to explain everything. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we get to present in public again very soon. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on then to 2775 Avenue Al Soleil. Mr. Snavely?
This presentation will not be quite as brief as the last presentation, but just a little history on 2775, which we got a lot of history already on 2775. But it was never my dream to own 2775. It was my dream to have 2775 demolished. I've been involved with that property for about the last 5 years with the former owner, who was Richard LeBoy. Met Richard when I went to him to get a 10-foot wide easement along the western side of his property for the ficus hedge for the HOA with Los Soleil. We became friendly. The care that has been taking care of the house in the last 5 years was from my aiding Richie in the program. I painted the front of the house. I got the roof repaired. I got the fascia board repaired, the garage door repaired, and the roof painted. Richie was not able to put this together for himself. So I became familiar with the exterior of the house. Took Richie to the hospital for a procedure, and I was notified by the hospital that he had passed. Picked up his things, went to the house, and that was the first time that I had gone inside the house. And I have never experienced firsthand what a hoarder's house was. And that's what this house was. Roof leaks that obviously had been there for 10 or 20 years, ceiling caving in, and just was not a fit residence to maintain human life, I don't think. It was one step maybe above a refrigerator box. So went to his estate, as you know, and the neighbor next door had property under contract, and he was going to demolish the building. That's fine. That's what we wanted for the neighborhood. That contract didn't materialize, and the property went back onto the multi-list, but this time the covenant or the direction to remove the property by the town was removed so that the estate could market the property, better market the property. When I was informed of this, I took the property under contract because it is my opinion that the property has to come down. So here I am now, own the property. I've got ARPV approval, which you have, to remove the property. And to give you the best idea of what I want to do with it, if you close your eyes and visualize a lawn, that's what it's going to look like. I'm removing 4,000 square foot of impervious surface. We're putting in a temporary sprinkler system so that, and we're going to sod the area that we remove and seed the rest of the property, sprinkle it, and maintain it. It will be mowed. So it's my intention at this point just to keep it as a lawn. I did not buy this property with a profit motive. I bought it for removal of the structure concept. So that's what you have before you. The tree that we're leaving on the property is a very well-established mango tree towards the rear of the property. All of the other trees are non-indigenous trees. Is that correct? I think but they're Norfolk pines, Brazilian pepperwoods, carrotwoods, and trees that were obviously never maintained.
Well, at the last meeting, we heard about this, and you were complimented for taking the steps to purchase this property and to remove the building and sod it. And so, you know, compliment you and I appreciate what you're doing for the neighborhood. Any questions?
I don't know, I think it's very good for the neighborhood.
I'd also like to add that vessel there is supposed to be grateful for your efforts in taking care of this problem, both before and.
You'd like to make a motion?
I was going to ask you, are you leaving that transit planning street?
I'm not going to leave it because you may have it, but it's angled over. You know, none of the trees are kept on the property at all, so that they're all kind of mutt trees. So as he kept everything.
I make a motion to approve a land clearing permit to clear property of non-native and diseased trees to prepare for new sod and irrigation. The property at 2775 Avenue West Lake.
A second?
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion to approve a level 3 architectural site plan to demolish all buildings and pavement on the property and to grade, irrigate, sod, and seed the property located at 2775 Avenue West Lake.
A second?
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Thank you, Chet. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to reports. Town manager, the utility undergrounding, and special report on the AT&T matter.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll start out with Comcast, to bring you up to date with Comcast. Comcast has placed all the drops to the houses. They're existing customers in town. They had not completed that before all the COVID business started. There's one conduit that needs to be placed at the intersection of Old School and Polo to serve the two houses on the north side of that intersection. The drops are up to the house, but they got to be connected to the handhold. This is another one of those examples that conflicts that happen out in the field versus the set of plans. I've worked with Wilco the last couple of weeks and verified that, the plans provided by the town's engineer did not show a conduit there, and so they didn't put one there. But I said, put one there, and so that conduit might actually go in by, on this Saturday, certainly next week. So that will totally, connect all of the drops to the houses. The last step that they need to do is what we've talked about before, and I mentioned to you, is this is the one that requires, an appointment. They have to put the new equipment on the side of the house, and so, I'm looking for a schedule for that, and when that will start, and, then once they do that, Comcast will be done.
Very good.
Moving now to AT&T, I did have a memo in the packet, and I'll read it for the public. At the commission meeting last month, I discussed a conversation with a representative from AT&T stating that AT&T had stopped all work on the undergrounding project until the town would agree to pay an additional $1 million. After an additional investigation, it is my recommendation that the town file a suit against AT&T for these actions. A draft complaint for your review is included with this memo. Also included in the supplement to your packet is the bio of Robert Wright, a Tallahassee lawyer who comes highly recommended from our litigation counsel at Jones Foster and others that I've spoken with as a skilled attorney in the area of utilities and undergrounding. Mr. Wright has agreed to a discounted government rate of $250 per hour, which is the same as our transactional rate with attorneys at Jones Foster. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Nazaro, our town attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Dunham. Now, Greg gives updates on the undergrounding every month, so it's very easy to piece together sort of what's been happening since the beginning of phase one. So if I could just put all this into context by way of a little background. The town broke ground on phase two of the undergrounding project in late 2016, and within a year, the town's undergrounding contractor, Wilco, was well on its way to finish the installation of conduit and other related work. By early 2018, FP&L had connected most of the homes in phase two, underground electrical service, and Mr. Dunham began to meet with Comcast and AT&T to facilitate the transition from FP&L to the telecommunications provider. Comcast started their work first, and in early 2019 had completed much of its work on the infrastructure. AT&T started next, but by June raised an issue with the town manager. They said they would need to bore new conduit on Gulfstream Road between Gulfview and Middle. Danny Brannon, the town's underground engineer, spoke up via email and told AT&T that if they changed its plan, not to charge the town for the extra cost for those changes. George Thomas, who's our representative of AT&T at the time, responded that, quote, "You are not being charged for any deviations that we make." At the August commission meeting, this again is 2019, Mr. Thomas's boss, Anakin Patino, said the only cable left for AT&T to place was from Gulfview up to Banyan in the rear easement, and then AT&T would begin placing terminals with the goal being finished at the end of 2019 by removing poles and cables. In September, Mr. Dunham updated the commission about 2 or 3 bores AT&T had to do because the conduit laid by Wilco, they said, was too deep, but he also noted at that time that it would be replaced at AT&T's expense. It was not until April of this year that AT&T, through a new representative Mr. Dunham had never met, informed the town the cost of AT&T's work had ballooned to well over $1 million, and told Mr. Dunham that they would stop performing work until the town agreed to enter a new contract reflecting this pricing. Mr. Dunham immediately asked for a written cost analysis comparison to the original estimate, as well as information on the amount of work that had actually been performed. At the May Commission meeting last month, after the May Commission meeting last month, Mr. Dunham and I continued our investigation, speaking with Tom Nemeth, who's the president of Wilco, the mayor of Palm Beach Shores, who's dealing with a similar issue, our litigation counsel, Joey O'Connor, who's here from Jones Foster, a utility and undergrounding lawyer in Tallahassee by the name of Chef Wright, and Gary Resnick, who helped negotiate the AT&T contract. About 2 weeks after Greg asked for the cost analysis comparison, we got a response from AT&T. They confirmed that they had stopped work and the actual costs incurred at that point were $1,060,000, with an expected cost to complete the project of between $100,000 and $300,000 more dollars. The summary that AT&T provided to support this increase noted that as work was performed, they discovered that infrastructure placed by the town contractor was not as agreed upon and gave 7 supposed examples. Mr. Dunham ran that by Tom Nemick, again from Wilco, who said he was unaware of any changes in the field that would warrant an increase and called the list petty, ridiculous, with no details and no description. So one of the items was to put additional flagmen at County Road for maintenance of traffic, which, quote, resulted in added costs. No items were broken down into who performed the work, how many people, or their hourly rate. So while we continue to figure out more information, the goal is to get the undergrounding project finished. The best way to do that in our investigation is to file a lawsuit while simultaneously pursuing other avenues to resolve the dispute. However, to file and initiate a lawsuit, we would need commission action. So with that, I turn it over to Ms. O'Connor.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's good to see you, and it's been my pleasure to work with the town of Gulfstream for about 6 years now, and to work with Trey and Greg most recently as well. Understanding the town's strong desire to move towards completion of the undergrounding project and recognizing that these issues with AT&T are what's standing in the way of full and final completion, and that we are now into a week into yet another hurricane season, and so the pressures on wanting to get this done are even stronger right now. What we have proposed, and I believe Trey has provided to you, is a draft complaint. And I want to talk about the nature of the claims, the relief sought, and where we intend to file the suit in terms of the jurisdiction, recognizing your goals and trying to get this to a resolution as quickly and efficiently as possible. So the nature of the claims, the lawsuit's in 2 counts. We wanted to keep it simple. It is for specific performance to compel AT&T to complete the project as they've agreed to in the written contract. Specific performance, the court will award where you have a situation where money damages are not an adequate remedy. And we believe that's supported here because the town's in a situation where the AT&T facilities that have been laid, AT&T can claim a property interest to those facilities. And so the town is not in a situation where you might be if you contracted a landscaper to provide services to your home, where if they didn't show up one day, you could go out and find a landscaper to complete the job and then sue the first contractor for the monies that you may have paid them for work not completed. To the contrast, we can't simply go out and hire another utility company to finish AT&T's job, and so I believe that gives us a good and strong basis for seeking to compel specific performance. Further to that, the actual agreement that the town has with AT&T contemplates and expressly provides that should they have discovered some material different site conditions that truly were not reasonably foreseeable, which we don't believe any of what they've identified are, and what they needed to do is do the work and bill us for those actual costs, and then we could have a dispute over whether those are or not materially different site conditions. So our first count would be for specific performance, and the second count would be for declaratory judgment. And that's necessary because AT&T here is claiming we're not just going to stop performing, but hey, town of Gulfstream, if you want us to complete the work, you need to enter into an entirely new contract and provide us all of this additional compensation. And so by declaratory relief, we'd be asking the court to determine and decide that there aren't any materially different site conditions that would give AT&T any right to additional compensation under the agreement, and that AT&T likewise can't seek what we would call extra contractual compensation for work outside of the agreement, where there wasn't any written change order, and that the town is protected under the doctrine of sovereign immunity from any claims by a contractor that somehow there was an oral change to the agreement. Any municipal government change orders must be in writing. And so those would be the two counts, specific performance and declaratory relief or declaratory judgment. The agreement with AT&T has a prevailing party attorney's fee provision, which would allow the town to seek to recover its reasonable attorney's fees and costs. Keep in mind that should the town not be successful, it's a mutual provision that would allow AT&T likewise to seek to recover its attorney's fees and costs. But we believe that we have a good faith basis, a strong argument for the two claims asserted. Again, understanding the town's desire to move this as quickly across the finish line as possible, I recommend that we file this lawsuit in federal court. AT&T, even though these are state law type claims, we have what's called diversity jurisdiction because AT&T is a foreign entity, the LLC, with which we contracted. And so there would be what's called diversity of citizenship, which allows us the opportunity to file in federal court. Much more favorable relative to timing. And I understand it may not be as favorable as the town would like. I mean, we can't get the lawsuit done over the summer. But compared to being in state court where this could take 3 to 5 years, if we file, imminently, a federal court, and it depends on what federal court judge we would have here in the Southern District of Florida, but generally they set trial dates 1 year out, which means that all the deadlines before that come up very quickly. And so that allows a plaintiff who files a lawsuit in federal court to really have some good leverage because the defendant can't slow things down as they might otherwise be able to do in state court. There's also a mediation requirement that applies in any case in Florida, whether state or federal court. But federal courts are going to set those mediation deadlines early, so that provides an opportunity as well to try to resolve it. And again, over 95% of cases don't ever get to trial, and the goal would be to get this in the strongest position for the town to get to a resolution with AT&T. In terms of the team at my firm, Jones Foster, that we have agreed to work on this project, we have Scott Hawkins, one of my partners, who's a former president of Florida Bar, highly accomplished in commercial litigation, and also I've asked within my firm for help from one of my partners, Michael Gore, who's experienced in construction law. He also has prior experience litigating with AT&T in the employment realm. So with that, happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Contractual disputes normally are not subject to injunctive relief. Is there any claim that could be made that would bring immediate relief from the court?
Federal court has the procedure under Rule 67 in terms of depositing monies in the registry of the court. And we can certainly look to see if that's an opportunity, if the town were willing to consider it, whether we can leverage that rule and the opportunity to put monies into the registry of the court that might give AT&T some satisfaction that when this all plays out, we can figure out what the costs are that are owed, but they have comfort that they can go ahead and finish the project. So that may be a procedural mechanism to move things along. But in terms of injunctive relief, you're right. I don't see that yet in terms of the contractual claim.
What you're saying is they might be able to finish it if we place money in the court.
Perhaps. I mean, I'm not sure that we can compel the court to require them to do it that way, but that may be a way in terms of negotiation. I don't want to get into too much of what strategy might be in public arena, but.
Because as it stands now, the lawsuit would just wind its way through the courts. Fortunately, federal court's much faster.
Right.
But still, you're waiting for judicial action.
Correct.
While the undergrounding remains unmoved. I read your complaint. I thought it was very good. And bear in mind that phase 1 was completed by AT&T for just over $160,000. So now phase 2, they're talking $1.2 million. So striking difference. I don't think we have any alternative but to follow this advice and get a lawsuit filed as soon as possible. Any questions, council? Vice Mayor? Any comments?
You talking to me, Mr. Mayor?
I was.
Oh, all right. Yeah, without, no, just, it sums it up pretty well. I mean, I did talk to, the town staff and to, Attorney Nazaro about it. And we discussed a few of the options, which, Ms. O'Connor had already discussed it for early resolution. And those don't seem to be, to in generic terms, to be ripe yet. But, you know, hopeful maybe if we have enough leverage, maybe something will happen in mediation. I guess that's my only statement.
Paul?
Mayor?
Yes. Yes, Paul?
I just wanted, for the record, to share with the commission and the public that I've had extensive discussions with Trey regarding the strategy. And the summation from those discussions is that this is the most efficient and fastest way to get AT&T back on the job. And I believe that that is the basis upon which we're proceeding. And that's why I would vote in favor of it. But I would just like to hear that from our outside counsel. Did you agree with that statement?
Yes, I mean, I think, from what I know about AT&T and their practice, it would be unlikely that if we've reached out and done a lot of inquiries in terms of whether it might be possible to informally and pre-suit get AT&T's attention, and we don't believe that's the case.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments?
I just had a question that, AT&T is referred to as a limited liability company. Why limited liability? Does that change their?
No, it's another designation of protection as corporations are.
Yeah, but it would have nothing to do with.
It would not affect the basis of the lawsuit. And in fact, in the complaint, it's spelled out there that their legal formation is by LLC, where it's located, where it was formed, and that sort of thing. That's standard. If there's no other comments, is there a motion regarding this lawsuit and the retention of special counsel?
I'd like to make a motion to proceed with the lawsuit and retain the special counsel.
And that's at the discounted rate of $250 per hour.
At the discounted rate of $250, governmental rate.
For a second? Second. Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthway,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joanne, very much. Thanks for coming in. Okay, let's move on. The next item is the road repairs, drainage, and CIP schedule update.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. At the last meeting in May, remember that Ms. Rebecca Travis made a presentation on work that was authorized by the town commission several months ago to engage Baxter Woodman to design and recommend, again, minor road and drainage repairs in the core area. And so she made that presentation last month. She's here again today to answer questions. And so your direction to the staff was to send a letter out to the residents. The mayor sent a letter out to the residents. We wanted to get a taste of the reaction that the core residents might have with this work. These were areas that were kind of pinpointed that were areas that were that had repetitive damage on the roadways in terms of the tracks that were left by cars that drove off into the right of way. So that, that letter's been out there for a month. I have had some reaction to the letter. Sometimes people I'm talking to for completely different reasons will comment about it. I've gotten calls from other, areas that were not included in that work asking, oh, can you guys do that here? So, my point is that I've gotten very positive feedback from the residents about this. Most recently, Ms. Travis and Rebecca too, and myself, we sat down, looked at, and if you also remember in May, I said to the commission, I'd like to, discuss this CIP program. I'd like to try to do that on an annual basis around budget time. So there's two things we're talking about here today, and that's the response to the letter we sent out, and then just an update on the CIP plan. Both Rebecca's and myself, we sat down and looked at this project, looked at the numbers that we were dealing with for 2020 in the CIP plan, so as a result of the numbers, which have come back really good in terms of the cost of the work that we're doing in 2020 and what we budgeted for the year 2020, we felt like it was a good idea to meld this project into the capital improvement plan, because we do have the funds available to do this, so that's what we've done. The graph that you have here, or the timeline that you have here, represents the addition of that as a line item to our CIP plan. And here in a minute, I'll have Ms. Tu. She'll be going over the cash management plan with these additions and where we're at right now, and what the future looks like with the CIP plan that we already have. So when you look at this one, in the blue and the yellow colors, this was provided by Ms. Travis, and if you can see the plan here, you may not remember, but basically from 2021 to the future, nothing has changed, except for the fact that the work we're doing in 2020 had originally been scheduled for the year 2025 and 26, and we moved, if you remember, we moved that up to start with that phase of the plan. So nothing has really changed here. You can see in 2020, the numbers, we're on schedule. You can see the construction has already started, so moving this plan for minor roadway and drainage improvements into the CIP made sense to us, and so that's what we are presenting to you today. Again, Ms. Tu can go over the numbers in the timeline that's attached to this timeline that Ms. Travis presented to us.
On the number for 2020 on the minor drainage, 322,000, obviously higher than what was described in the report.
That's right, and there's a reason for that, is because of the positive feedback that I got. There was one area on Oleander, basically between Banyan and Lakeview, that does experience, it's got water standing on it all the time, much like the north end of Polo. There's a large elevation change between Banyan and Lakeview, and in the middle of that is a plateau where the water doesn't move. And so, talk to Ms. Travis, so that's an additional area that we're looking at. But we're also looking at opportunities to put curbs in where we believe there's just repetitive ruts from trucks that can't make the turns. So we have some candidates for that, and we included some funds for that also.
Maybe Ms. Travis could just, update the report to us.
Good morning. Becca Travis, Baxter and Woodman. So on the, let's start with the minor drainage improvement elements. So that was not part of the original CIP. As Mr. Dunham said, we had a good bid number come in on the A1A water main project. So there were funds left there to utilize. So the gray line with the minor drainage improvements project, that is additional to what was in the CIP. And in the report that we provided for the construction cost estimate, that was about $240,000. That was just for construction. So to get to that $322,000 number that's under the 2020 in the gray, we added to that our design fee, which is about $10,000. We added to that the construction cost for adding raised curbing at a number of intersections to keep the cars on the road so they're not turning out and rutting the grass along the side. We added to that some drainage improvements along Oleander, mainly like probably a swale, not paving improvements. So that was about $20,000. So for construction services, and the construction services is about 10% of the total. So adding that all together, we got up to the $322,000. Again, we're talking budgeting right now. We don't try and be the low bid on our budgeting estimates. We want to make sure you guys have enough in your budget, and then it comes in similar to how we did we came in lower on the actual number on the A1A water main. So we want to have you guys have enough set aside. So,
The actual, I'm sorry, pardon me, the actual, in our budget for the improvements, in 2020, we actually budgeted $3 million, and we came in all total just slightly over $2 million. So the numbers are good, and all through this cash management plan, we've been very conservative with our numbers, and I want to say thank you to Mr. Lyons, who's been working with us every year on our cash management plan. And a big help to us in that regard.
Well, and then another thing we added onto the bottom of this table was just to keep in mind what the original 10-year CIP amount was in 2018. I've added that box down to on the bottom where it says 10-year CIP, May 2018 total, which is the $10.339 million. So now with the adjustments to actual numbers, the addition of the minor drainage improvements, now we're at $10.46 million. So we're a little bit more, but just to keep us where keep the memory of what we started out at, so we can keep on track with that number.
You had mentioned, sorry, go ahead, John. No.
I have a question about the curbing. I think it's great to keep the people off the lawns, but is there enough width of road to have two people, like, not run into the curb? Do you know what I mean? Or is one car gonna have to stop? Because our roads are so narrow. That's what I'm getting at. How are you addressing that so people just don't run up into the curb all the time?
Yeah, so on the streets that have been identified in the minor drainage improvement project, we've identified trying to attain a minimum 18-foot pavement width.
Okay.
Polo, we looked at a 20-foot because some of the area on the south is already 20.
We want to try to make that consistent with the width of Polo on the south side.
Yeah, okay.
So we want to have a minimum lane width of 9 feet. That's kind of a standard minimum for residential, low speed type roads, consistent with the character of the town. We don't want some, paving to get too much up the right of way. But in direct response to your curb question, the place we want to put the curbs at is at the intersection, just along the edge, not on the approaching streets that are just straight. So just at the intersection where you have a street, so just on the curve around the outside of each intersection.
Right.
So when when a vehicle's taking the turn at the intersection, they do stay on the street and maybe hit the curb if they take it too tight. Or if you have a truck with a landscape trailer on it, he's kind of kept to the street.
Yeah.
Rather than going off of it. But the intent is not to put curb along the straightaway of any street.
Yeah, it's just on the turn.
Yeah.
So there'll be enough room for people not to technically hit the curb all the time.
Correct.
How many curbs are you considering and where are you thinking of locating them?
Well, Greg and I been talking about that, so it's kind of a work in progress still. He's gotten some comments on specific locations that residents want that curbing.
I wrote them down, but they're in my office. I think I can remember them. One curb is, or an area that is definitely, there's no grass grows there because there are cars that turn there all the time. There's Middle Road and Polo. That would be the southwest part of that intersection. At Banyan or Lakeview, the southwest part of that intersection is always got mud because people cannot, they don't negotiate that turn. So that's another candidate. And then possibly the two sides, sides of the intersection of Polo at Old School. Mr. Cudmore is.
Yeah. No, that's the plan.
That's
the plan.
That gets,
that's on the east-west sides?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those two frequently have rutting, and especially the house on the southwest side. They've driven off the side of that road that the grass doesn't grow there anymore. I mean, it's such a rut. I mean, we fill it in, and then 2 hours later, there's another rut there. But that's a candidate for widening the road to help try to circumvent that. So
at some of these locations, the curbing would be part of the road expansion.
Correct.
Refer to expansion.
We'd have to plan the curbing to fit the expansion of the roadway, like you're suggesting.
I believe that's the Pippins back there. It's hard to tell with masks and all, Carla and Michael. That's me. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Michael.
There it is.
You had indicated sent some photographs, I believe, of that corner that Mr. Dunn mentioned. I don't know if we have those up here or not.
Yeah, we do. Did you want to comment about it, Mr. Pittman?
Well, I'm Michael Pippins. I live at 23 Polo Drive, the corner of Middle and Polo. And I was delighted to see your letter, Mr. Mayor, talking about, improving this. And, when I got it, it said we might be adding some curves. And so I saw that as an opportunity to do a little analysis. So I got in my golf cart and drove up the street and made a few photos. And the photo on the right is our corner, and you can see it gets destroyed often. The grass was replaced 3 times this year, so it's pretty bad. The one further up on Lakeview has a nice curve, and it was my understanding that was a test curve. I've only been here 2 years, so I don't know the history, but I think it looks really nice. And then the other 2 curbs that were referenced in your letter, I went up and took a photo, and I said, well, those look better than the one on Middle. And my understanding, based on the letter, is you might be considering adding a few, and this was just my solicitation that I think this is probably the worst intersection on Polo. And so that's my synthesis.
It seems to have been borne out. So,
And, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, anytime somebody mentions the curb on Lakeview and, Polo, they love it. So, I've not gotten any negative, feedback for that curb.
Can I make a few points, Mayor?
yes, go ahead.
I'm in favor of installing these curbs in critical locations. I'm just wondering, is there a way that we can accomplish our goal with a profile of a curb that's not as large? I mean, it may not hold up, so I mean, I may be asking a dumb question, but I do get comments, have had comments, I should say, that we would not want to see, and this is trying to get the right balance of this rutting, getting rid of the rutting, but not looking like a development, that we wouldn't want a lot of curbs. And I know we don't intend to do that. But in trying to reach that perfect balance, is there a way that we could lower the profile of that curb, or wouldn't it actually serve its purpose?
It's my understanding that the design of the curb is important to withstand the striking of large tires and trucks and whatnot. There are other types of curbs, and
Yeah, a good
Rebecca, you
example,
can address that.
a good example of another type of curb is what we have out here in the parking lot. I don't know if you've paid attention to them, but it's not, it doesn't have the gutter with it. I mean, there are other types of curbs that, you know, that we could explore, but I think the mayor was correct. I mean, you know, we don't want to put a curb in there that, you know, somebody delivering a low boy, drives over the curb and then, you know, cracks it.
No, I would agree with that. The only, again, I know I'm pushing water upstream, but the extent that we could do something with a lower profile, I think would be desirable, if that's possible. Also keep in mind that when we widen the roads, as you're approaching from the east going west on the real troubled turns on the Polo, we're going to make it easier for the person to make that turn going south, because we're going to widen the road on the opposite side. So just, I think that's right anyway.
You know, there's another intersection at Old School and Gulfstream Road. You know, when you're going up here, you get to Gulfstream or Old School Road, you can see where Old School Road had been widened by a foot years ago, and it came up to that intersection and then stopped. So I'm going to talk about that with Ms. Travis. I think you and I looked at that, Mayor, when we were in the golf course. Some of those can just be extended with asphalt, so you're widening that that turn there from what is already there, but just, in my opinion, stop too soon. Just keep it going more to complete the intersection. So I think there's an opportunity perhaps to do that at some of these.
Do you think it wise to widen the roads and then figure out where we need more curbs first, until we do both of them simultaneously?
No,
because some of it, the pavement's just falling apart at the, you know, I mean, at Middle Road too.
Right.
I mean, the pavement's almost gone.
Yeah, so like on this picture, Polo and Middle, where it's a jagged edge, any curbing, they would start with saw cutting a clean edge with a consistent curve. And maybe some of these curves are too tight or too wide. So there's like a standard curve radius that we would try to employ, you know, and if there needs to be some pavement repair at the curb lines, we just have the contractor do that as well, yeah.
We're hearing you, and, we can go out and, take a closer look at all of them, but we just wanted to have some, money in there in case we do that.
Well, the roads are not in great shape.
I'm sorry?
I said the roads are not in great shape in
No,
a lot
they're
of
not.
places.
That's right.
We're not talking about major road enlargement.
No.
Foot, 18 inches, 2 feet in some places. Middle Road, for example, not being widened. But the concern is, okay, that's why we did the test curve, to see what the response would be, because it was a dramatically different aesthetic, visual in the town. And it has worked very well and met with considerable approval by the residents, at least the ones I've talked to. So yes, it makes sense to add more, but how many more? At a certain point, it
That's
does
the $1 million question.
drop over the.
We just want to, let you know that we're looking at it, and if there, again, I'll show you the intersection of Old School and, Millstream Road, where, just extending that road and the curve there with another foot of asphalt, from what's already there might be solutions to some of the other intersections.
So you're not looking for commission action at this point?
No, I mean, we don't necessarily need, a motion or anything like that. We're just updating you on the CIP. So again, the numbers from 2021, into the future, haven't changed. Next year, this next budget year would be a planning, design, and permitting for work, that would be in 2022 in the North Core area. Now, that would include, begin water main replacements and the associated work on the roads.
I thought last month we talked about, the cost savings that might be, enjoyed if we tied this minor street repair into the existing road work that we're gonna be doing on A1A. I thought there was gonna be some exploration of that for this meeting.
County road.
Maybe I'm mistaken. We've got this budget for 2020.
We talked about avenues for constructing the minor drainage improvements without going out to bid, utilizing existing contracts, piggybacking on other cities or towns, similar construction.
But we have integrated this as being presented to you now into the current year's project. So we would have simultaneous projects going on with the minor road repair and drainage, and as well as our water main.
When do you think you can do the minor road repairs? I mean, off season or?
Well, they would be this summer.
This summer, okay. That's all.
I guess that was the point. I mean, that requires commission action. If you're talking about a change to the CIP over $300,000, and the definition of that work that would be performed.
That would be approved at a subsequent meeting when there's like a concrete, well, here's our bid, this is what we discussed in a previous meeting. We went out to bid, or we piggybacked, and now we're presenting it for your approval. And at that point, you could say, well, how about a curb here, a curb not there, or just approve it because there's been enough discussion, at least at the meeting, to move forward with the work as presented.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think at the next meeting, we should have something concrete to vote on.
Right, I mean, that's the next step.
Okay.
So maybe I misunderstood your question, but yes, I mean, we would still have to come back for your approval for that part, just like we had the approved project going on.
We would just want a consensus with all the commissioners to go ahead and put a project together to put out for bid, to bring back for the commission commission action next month with something that's concrete.
I'm in favor of that.
I'm in favor. Is this job scheduled for about 60 days, Mr. Travis? For Greg?
He was
60
asking
days?
50 days.
about the construction time that is let.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll kind of be running slightly into the shoulder season if we hurry and do not get too much rain.
Yeah, I mean, July, let's see, so July, August, and September, yes, we hope to be done by, September.
My only follow-up comment, I'm in favor, like Commissioner Lyons. I've been getting calls on 2 issues directly related to this, which again, I think you'll address in the next 30 days. I've been advising residents of the town who think their pavers and mailboxes are going to need to be moved pursuant to the mayor's prior letter to send their questions or comments in writing to you all, so you actually have them for what you're doing the next 30 days. And then the second thing is there still seems to be some confusion, not to bombard residents with all this public work stuff, of when the actual roads and the core will be repaved. That's it. I don't have anything further.
Yeah, the answer to the pavers is that the contractor would remove the pavers, they would keep them, and they would then, put them back to meet the edge of the new pavement with the same pavers. And there may be a few instances where a mailbox needs to be moved, from one side to the other or back, obviously.
And what's the timeframe for repaving the roads in the core?
It looks like 2022 on the.
For the north core.
Yeah.
The
North part of the core, and then we were going to move to, and remember this was all discussed a couple of years ago, to do work in Place Ossaway, and then come back to do the South Core area with the road work and the water mains. But this is a dynamic plan. I mean, those can be changed if you would, prefer to move South Core up after the north part of the core area. I mean, we can do that, but
let's see how the minor repair work goes.
okay.
Then we can evaluate it at that time. Any other questions? We've got a lot to cover. I want to get
Yeah, we did.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Plaza Soleil subdivision update.
Yes, I just wanted to report, I went to a community meeting a couple of weeks ago. In the evening, that Mr. Glick's team made a presentation to residents in Plaza Soleil that were invited to attend. We had a really good, there was a really good attendance to this meeting. I would say 40 people.
Yeah, 40 people.
And they asked a lot of questions of Mr. Glick's team, but to me, it looked like there was a very positive response from the residents to his proposals. At this point in time, we don't have any kind of applications into the town, but that was one thing that we wanted to make sure Mr. Glick's team did was to get response similar to the letter we sent out. Responses and get the information out to the residents of his plans. And it was a very, very positive meeting. So I just wanted to report on that.
But no applications been submitted yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Any comments or questions on that? All right, moving on to Plaza Soleil street lighting.
Yes, so you can expect to see trucks out there on Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah.
I saw one there, FPL is changing out those big junction boxes or whatever they.
Yeah, that's part of the lighting.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're doing the hand digging work, right?
Out there.
Okay, yeah, so.
We were doing work yesterday, they're
Yeah.
blocking off all the parts
So, but my understanding is that the crews that will be starting to install the poles should be out there on Wednesday.
Any other comments on lighting? Looks like it's moving, ahead. Let's go to the abandonment on Banyan Road.
Yes,
Mr. Dunham?
I'm gonna hand this over to the attorney.
Yes, Mr. Zara.
I think Greg covered a lot in his memo. There was discussion about the setbacks in the FAR. So as you note in the second paragraph there on the memo, it talks about the setbacks will be pushed out 50 feet to the northeast corner of the property to allow a home more centered on the lot. The property relating to FAR in the third paragraph, the property is larger because it was combined with a small amount of the property that was directly to the north, which kind of resulted in this issue with the road sort of into the middle of the property. Currently, it's 2,800, approximately 2,800 square feet the lot is, which would allow an 8,200 square foot house to be built. Adding the 500 square feet approximately of the road would only add about 100 square feet to the FAR, resulting in an allowance of 8,320 square foot house. He talks about emergency vehicles and how he doesn't believe there would be any negative impact. And then there are some photos of the property there and overhead, which from the property appraiser's office showing the road kind of going, for lack of a better word, into the property. And the shot photos of what the property currently looks like. Now that gate is in the road, but there was an agreement executed between the town and the previous owner in January of 1989, which allowed them to do that. And the town could have them remove that at their own expense if the town so desired at any time. As it relates to the process for abandonment, Florida Statute Section 33609, the town allows the town commission at its discretion to abandon a public road. When the road is abandoned, it vests in the abutting fee owner, which would be the Davises, I believe they're here, who own the property at 588 Banyan. So there wouldn't be no sale taking place. They're asking us to abandon the road. Consulted with Mr. Randolph on this issue, and he suggested we could use a policy in place at the town of Palm Beach, which includes certain fees, including an application fee for abandoning the road. Fees would include a surveyor to provide a legal description of the property being abandoned, the section of the road, and an appraiser to value the abutting lot. The appraisal will be used to determine the value of the road being abandoned and would be incorporated as part of the total fee. Now, just doing some very preliminary figures, taking the number from Mr. Dunham's letter of 28,100 square feet of the lot, and the number from the property appraiser, which values the lot itself separate of the structure at $3.74 million. That comes to a price per square foot of $133, placing the value of the 500 square feet of road at about $66,500. The town has done a recent appraisal based on the foreclosure action that we were looking at filing on 2775 Avenue off the Way, and we've done recent surveying work, so that would be easy to incorporate. That would be about $1,500 total for both of those services, which would bring the total fee for abandonment in the $65,000 to $70,000 range. That is maybe a little conservative. Based on just the figure from the property appraiser's office, we would have to, like I said, get an appraiser to do that. But again, that is just the property separate of the structure. So if the commission wants to, is interested in that procedure, we can certainly move forward with that. There has been an application submitted, as I think Mr. Dunham mentioned. So we'd just be going through that procedure, providing notice, and getting that on an upcoming agenda. And I just didn't know if Davis had any.
Davis are here, and obviously this is something you desire, Mr. Davis.
Yes, good morning, JR and Nadia Davis, and to be clear, we aren't necessarily looking to build another house. We may do that down the line, but it's just an awkward situation kind of given the road, you know, into the middle of the property, not sure what the historical, you know, I guess reason was for that, but in any event, appreciate your considering this, and, those sound, make a lot of sense to us.
So what would you like from us, Sarah?
I mean, at this point, we can go ahead and just process the application. There was an application that was presented. It was just too early to, I believe, to maybe provide for notice. So I just wanted to brief you on, you know, exactly what we're doing, and then we'll move forward with that. Hopefully, it will be on the next meeting agenda for your consideration.
And by way of consensus, is there support or objection to?
You know, it makes sense because everyone's looked at that property, but it cleans it up.
Yeah. All right, good. Then we'll look forward to seeing that at the next.
And of course, that is subject to getting the surveying work and the appraisal, but
If that can be done.
we can get that moving quickly.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Safety. All right, let's move on then. Our ARPB meeting will be June 25th at 8:30 a.m. And we now have the finance report and water usage report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, these reports represent 66% of our budget and, water usage, during the year. CFO 2 is, available if there are any comments about the, particular, comments about the budget summary. She has provided comments in the introduction to this report, and she's now on the screen. So if there are any questions, Rebecca is on.
Any of the commissioners have questions? Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Very good.
And I would say that we did get our preliminary estimated values for the town of Gulfstream. They went up about 3%. So we were very happy about that. Maybe some people weren't happy about that, but they did. So, you know, we continue to be a popular place to be and have very valuable property here. So
very good. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Chief, please report.
I request that the activity report be approved as submitted. We'd like to make mention that we have hired a new officer as of June 1st. Our previous officer that he took the spot for left us back February 1st. So it's been 5 months we've been running without an officer, and that's how long it's taken us to find somebody that we feel fits our needs in our community here. Just a little side note so you understand why it's so tough to find someone. As of February this year, there were over 100 vacancies in the county for police officers. So we're kind of drawing from a big pool there that we're fighting to compete with, to find especially someone to meet our needs and fits in. Officer Fernandez is our new officer. He came from New York City with 24 years experience in the city of New York. So he's,
maybe at the next meeting, he could stop in. We'd like to meet them, see them and say hello.
He just started here the first, so he's in training right now, but we'll try to make that arrangement.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Any questions? If not, we'll accept the report as submitted. Let's move on to the replacement of a drainage pump.
Yes. As you know, we have the two large pumps in the intersection of Polo and Old School Road, and they certainly help in draining that area. That's the lowest point in the core area. And one of them is just not working. It tries, but it needs to be replaced. These pumps, I don't really have the background of when they were originally put in, but you all know about them, and they certainly do work. When we get levels at 2 feet or 2 or 3 feet in there, you turn those pumps on, and it really begins to drain them, as we saw a couple weeks ago. One of them, though, is not working and needs to be replaced. I do have George Brett here, who's familiar with our pumps. He works on them, and the pump that we need to put in there is this Xylem pump made by Flight.
Yes, sir.
And this actually, we can only get it from the manufacturer, and so we're just asking for you to approve this would be a sole source product, because it's a particular pump that fits into the space in there, and it's just like the other one that is still there, right?
Yes, sir. We've already replaced one. This is the second one. It's 14 or 16 years old.
Okay, so it needs to be replaced.
Is install price?
No,
That is the price from Xylem. We're not getting in the middle of that. You're a municipality.
Yeah, this is the
That
price
would
of
be
the
it.
pump, the cost of installing it is around $3,000 to $4,000.
Greg, what about the other one?
The other one is a newer pump. I believe it's approximately about 8 years old. This is the original that was installed, if I'm not mistaken, about 16 years ago. I was
Okay.
brought it, backed up, and the pump has shorted out. It's a 10-inch or 10-inch pump. Weighs about 1,500 pounds.
Wow.
There's about 1,800 gallons in it. It pumps it down the street. You guys know where it goes?
Yeah. I take it repairs are, be better off.
The problem with doing a repair on a pump like that,
It has been repaired.
It's been repaired multiple times.
Yes.
Reached the end of its useful life.
Yes.
All right, I mean, there's obviously no choice, we've got to replace it, so this pump is very
Do you need a
important.
motion?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
I'll move to, authorize the cost of repairing and replacing the pump plus, the installation charge.
Okay.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Next, let's move on to Boyle v. Gulfstream, case number 6817. Thank you, George. Mr. Mazzara?
Thank you, Mayor. In April 2019, Martin O'Boyle made a public records request for all records that mention or refer to him, but limited to an incident at Town Hall on September 22nd, 2015. The town engaged in diligent efforts to determine what records were sought and locate the records responsive to the request, including having the outside IT contractor perform a number of keyword searches. The IT contractor then transferred the emails located from his searches to the town computer. The town's typical process in responding to records requests is to make the responsive records available online through its Laserfish web link. Approximately 1,300 pages of public records were provided in response to this request. However, in transferring the records responses to the request from the town's computer system to the Laserfish web link, an email was inadvertently not included with the transfer and thus was not produced to the plaintiff in response to the request. Even though this was only a mistake, the result is the same under the public records law, so I need a consensus confirming the town's litigation strategy moving forward with this case, which is ask the court to enter judgment in favor of the plaintiff and against the town, and proceed to determine the reasonable cost of enforcement, thereby cutting off any additional entitlement to fees. So I don't need a motion, but I would just like a consensus confirming that's the strategy that the town is taking.
It certainly makes sense. I think the efforts to produce all of these records should be impressive to the court evaluating whatever fees should be assessed against the town for this simple clerical mistake worked under a volume request of documents. So better to cut off all additional fees, take it to the court, and let them assess whatever they feel is an appropriate fee for it.
I agree.
I agree.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on then to the voting delegate for the Palm Beach County League of Cities. This typically is the town manager, followed by the mayor and commissioners. Anybody have any additions, corrections, changes? Apparently how we've always done it.
Approved.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
voting delegates, the town manager, followed by the mayor, and followed by
The rest of the
the
commission.
rest of the commission. Who volunteers?
Whoever's available.
Who's ever available, that's a better word.
Is there a second?
I second.
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Well, I just want to comment, Mr. Lyons did not sound enthusiastic about
Yeah,
that.
you kind of
You
sniffed.
might want to be.
I'll relinquish my position.
You caught that.
All right, finally, let's move on to resolution 20-3, Ms. Taylor.
Yes. This is a resolution of the Town Commission, the Town of Gulfstream, Palm Beach County, Florida, urging the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to enter into rulemaking to adopt an idle speed, which is a no-wake zone, within the Intercoastal Waterway System from George Bush Boulevard north approximately 2 miles and providing an effective date. It's presented for adoption this 12th day of June 2020.
Discussion.
I'm in favor of it.
I'm very in favor of this.
Okay, very good. Resolution number 20-3 has been read to us for adoption. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move to approve resolution 20-3.
Second?
Ms. Taylor?
Commissioner Lyons,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
Commissioner Orthwein,
Yes.
Mayor Morgan.
Yes. Any other items?
Mayor, Paul Lyons. One suggestion, today we had a full agenda, so it's probably not a good day to do it. But I think it would be helpful for all the commissioners to learn a little bit more about how the numbers were developed by Rebecca as relates to the CIP program. You know, it's a very sizable expenditure for the town, and I think it would be useful at the next meeting just to give a review of what the assumptions were originally, what they are today, where we were in 2018, where we are now, and where we think we'll end up. Just to ensure that the governance of the expenditures that are so sizable are clearly shared with the public. So if we could do it at the next meeting.
That's a good idea. Things have evolved and changed,
Absolutely.
so we'll
I
put
mean,
that.
it is difficult to talk about all that in a meeting that is packed like this one. And it's a good suggestion, Mr. Lyons, and it won't really, interfere with the work that we have going on now.
Great. Okay, well
Thank you.
noted. If there's nothing else, meeting's adjourned.
All right, thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.